welcome to Data Conversations Over Coffee with myself, Craig Stewart. Another great studio episode here in our Linden studio and a face-to-face conversation with my guest, Ncumisa Hlapo, who's the business intelligence lead at Afrocentric Group, but also the host of Data Talks. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have Ncumisa on the show, is just to kind of understand what sort of conversations you're having, what else is happening in the industry, rather than just the direct conversations that I'm having. It's always good to have a fellow podcast host on the show. How are you doing?
I'm good, Craig. Thank you so much for the invite. It's such an honor. A lot of my leaders have sat on this chair, so.
Absolutely. And Ncumisa has been helping me with our virtual events since last year, being someone who in the chat rooms has sparked conversation, added her wealth of experience. So thank you so much for all the help that you've provided us over the last 15 months. It's been fantastic.
Thank you. I mean, the platforms have been a great source of motivation and inspiration for me and growth. I think actually I've accelerated a lot of plans that I had through engaging on the platforms and the conferences are great.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think everybody's just taken to it. I think, making the best of a bad situation.
Yeah.
And just sharing as much knowledge as they can. Luckily, we've had these platforms. I mean, if this whole thing had happened 10, 15 years ago, who knows what sort of state we would have been in.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think in the midst of everything that was happening, it was, the conference is one of the best things to happen to us as a data community. I mean, I've pointed a lot of young people in that direction that sort of need to hear from people that are leading the industry, but perhaps don't know where to reach or where to access them. So it's been a great platform for them to go and access them in the comfort of their homes. It's less intimidating. And I mean, the leaders are always open, the speakers are always open to engaging and answering questions, even offline. I've met quite a few mentors on the platform as well. So it's been great to sort of point a lot of young people in that direction as well, young analysts, like young data leaders that are coming up to say, you know what, here's a platform, go and engage and learn as much as you can. It's very exciting. Yeah.
And as good as the virtual events have been, we've got in-person events coming back in October, limited numbers, and Ncumisa is actually joining me as a host, which is really exciting. It's not going to just be my face and my boring voice, but actually someone who is in the industry doing data analytics on a day-to-day basis. So I'm really excited about that as well.
I'm excited about that. Yeah, that's another full circle moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the things I wanted to chat to you about today and really kind of open floor to you is just, I guess, what are some of the things that you're finding in the conversations that you're having through Data Talks? Maybe you can share with people, how to find that and everything, but it's obviously a lot more about mentoring and inspiring young people to get into data, which I think is fantastic. And it's such a big conversation.
Thank you.
So maybe you can just tell us or tell the audience a little bit about that, and then also some of the trends, some of the learnings that you've had, and where to from there.
Yeah. So the Data Talk sessions started as a project that I was doing for Youth Month in June. And this came as an initiative based off a lot of young people asking questions to say, I'm new in the data space. What possible ways can I access to accelerate my growth? Where can I get mentorship? So, and that started because I started writing on LinkedIn a little bit of the experience that I've gathered over the past 10 years in business intelligence. So I would start writing about that. And the aim, funny enough, was to empower businesses because COVID came and my thought was, a lot of businesses are going to be thinking, how do we pivot? Because everyone is talking about pivoting. How do we pivot? And how do we know which direction to pivot to? So it was to say that, okay, start using data. If you ever thought about using data, but you haven't really wrapped your head around it, because a lot of entrepreneurs, they focus on the business. So the aim of the inception of the whole Data Talks was there to say, okay, let me just put out a little bit of advice to a lot of entrepreneurs out there to say, how do you pivot? How do you use data to make informed decisions about your business? How do you start collecting data? Because I know that a lot of businesses do not even, prior to last year, didn't even collect data. Some of them were not even on digital platforms to allow themselves to be able to collect the data. So it started like that, and I would write predominantly on my Instagram because I engage with a lot of young entrepreneurs on Instagram. Then a lot of young people were coming in and saying, okay, you in the data space, you seem to, be excited about what you're talking about. How do we grow in the space? How do we access mentorship? I've just started last year I was a business analyst. How do I then become a data analyst? Because I think I want to pivot to being a data analyst. And which colleges should I go to access short courses? Which higher institution courses or streams should I access? I mean, I haven't been in varsity for a while. So it was sort of difficult to know. I come from an information technology background in a university of technology. So I think that was my background. So I can only give them from there, how did my journey go? But then I thought, I can't answer all of their questions. Some of them are in traditional universities, doing some of the traditional streams, economics, accountancy, some of them in engineering. Like, let me bring the engineers, let me bring the hiring managers, actually, for them to answer the questions of these young people. So in June, I said, okay, let me start. I started the first data talk sessions. I invited some leaders in the industry, and they were so receptive and so eager to speak to these young people and impart that knowledge. And it was 4 Wednesdays in June, and it was done live on Instagram, and it took off. The first session had it was moving between 180 people connecting live. And that's a lot, because at the time I didn't have that much of a following. But I think for me that showed that there's an appetite. A lot of young people are hearing about careers of the future, and data science is in the center of that, or data science related careers are at the center of that. But now how do they position themselves? They're looking for answers. A lot of leaders responded. We had the sessions in June, and it was to celebrate and commemorate youth, to say what, you know what, South Africa has been through a journey. We are the youth of 2021. We've got access to digital platforms. How do we carry on progressing as a youth? How do we use Internet of Things to connect and, sort of continue the revolution, if you can put it like that? How do we, the youth of 1976, what they did was to disrupt. How do we disrupt with what we have? Come from all walks of South Africa and say, you know what, this is how we're going to disrupt with education, with technology. And it was amazing. And it has just carried on from there, and it has grown in my heart. And it's an initiative for me that is more about impact than data analytics, which is different, because my life, my adult life has been characterized by data. But I thought there's another side to data. Let's bring in the information and the knowledge. And with that, there's a lot of data literacy, explaining to them the concepts. What is a business analyst compared to a data analyst? What are the differences? Where are the overlaps? And if you want to pivot, what's the best way to do that? What is a data scientist, or what are the different ways in which a data scientist is being referred to? Because there's a lot of definitions. And if you want to be a data scientist, you're coming from an engineering background, how do you pivot? And to hear that, and for the young people to hear that from people who come from engineering background that are heads of data at the moment, was very reassuring and very validating for them. So that's where the data talk sessions have been, and it's been amazing. The impact has been amazing to demystify our industry for young people. We need the talent, and we need to help our economy out. We need to increase job security for young people, and data needs the talent. Data needs the hands. So to merge, to create that bridge has been amazing.
Well, there's clearly an appetite for it, as you say, for youngsters or people who are not in the data space, who have kind of seen it and think that's really exciting. How do I get into that? So there's an appetite for that, and your sort of channel for that and providing that information is fantastic. But wouldn't you then say that there's not enough information out there? If people are coming to you through Instagram to understand how to do this, it's great that you're doing it, but surely there should be other mechanisms in place through schools, through universities. Why is this not happening, or are you seeing a growth in this? Like, how does this come about?
It's funny you should say that, because this is a conversation I was having with one of the leaders that I've just adopted as my mentor. So we have this regular, and I was saying to him, because he was saying that, okay, there needs to be a data literacy course. We were talking about data literacy, that we need to increase data literacy within the data analytics space. A lot of analysts within the data space need to be educated on data literacy. A lot of us are not that data literate, which is why organizations sometimes do not see the return on investment that they want on their data efforts, right?
Yeah.
But then I said to him, actually, I think data literacy for me, or the subject of data, is what financial literacy is today.
Yeah.
We need to start it from school, from the grassroots. I feel like in high schools already, that conversation should be had.
Yeah.
And I want to find it within my own capacity. How do we access high schools and start telling young people that you can actually start teaching yourself how to program in Python. You can start teaching yourself about data governance. You can start, you can start investigating data quality as a subject. I don't think those concepts are too complicated for some of the gifted young people that we have in high schools, for them to grasp and understand at least the foundational concepts. So it's definitely something that we need to think about investing in nurturing it at grassroots level, because by doing that, I think we accelerate the growth of the maturity of the industry as well, especially within the African context. We can have ingrown talent that can work for our organizations, and I mean with data, with the right kind of if organizations or industries use data the right way, we know that they can only but help the economy and the country. So I think it plugs into that. It's one of those investments that we need to think about doing at grassroots level in high schools. Yeah. In universities, I feel like every stream should have a data analytics related subject. Yeah. I remember back in the day, they introduced entrepreneurship to our streams. And I mean, I was doing IT. It had nothing to do, I had no plans. Yeah. But they introduced because they wanted you to understand the concepts around entrepreneurship or business. And I think it's time for data analytics to take that stance as well.
Yeah, and I think it's I've talked about this for the last good few years, is that young kids don't sort of grow up wanting to be a chief data officer or head of it, because they don't know it. Your mom or your dad might be an accountant, or a CFO or CMO or whatever it may be, a CIO. To that effect, which is a little bit closer, but I just don't know if there's enough, and it's changing now, but it's one of those things where kids leaving matric going into computer science, they're in the field, they go into university, they don't know that a chief data officer or a chief analytics officer actually exists.
No.
And it's something that we try and push as much as we can from Carinium's perspective. I know that, thankfully, in the last 15 months, we've had loads of students join our virtual events, because now they can, because cost is obviously not an issue. So I think through our own small way, we're able to kind of say, look, there's something that you can aspire to be. If you want to be a C-level person and you love data, there's actually a path to that now.
That you can explore. And I mean, even something as simple as a business intelligence analyst. I didn't think I wanted to be a business intelligence analyst. I think data careers, just in the broad sense of it, are not something that is put as a viable career path it wasn't back in my day. And I think even to this day, it's still a bit misty. And especially now understanding for those that are already in it, that you can actually go as far as the C-suite without leaving your core function, which is data. Because in the past, maybe people would have thought that I need to be a CTO, or I need to be a COO, wherever they would try and position themselves. But you can actually, and I think there's a lot of value in bringing data people into the C-suite as well. Yeah. There's a lot of value. It answers a lot of questions such as what comes first, innovation or data? Or is it data then innovation? A lot of those questions need to be answered for businesses. Yeah. And I think the best way, even being in the industry, Craig, for the short time that I've been, I work with people that have been in the industry for like 30 years, 20 years, my 10 years, they make it seem short. But even being in the industry for as long as I have, I think there's value when there's the data mandate is being driven by a data person from the top down. The adoption of it becomes, I think they can articulate what needs to be done. They can drive the gospel, so to say. So even having that CDO is actually, for me, it's exciting that we are now going in that direction, and that's an option for people that want to go in that direction. And I think now it's a matter of how do we let the young people know that here is a space, and how do you enter this space and how do you find your own voice in this space? Because, I mean, the space is very broad. People might think that a business intelligence analyst does exactly the same thing as a data analyst, but actually for you to be effective, no. You need to differentiate between the two and, you know, make the most of your role and niche those roles as much as possible. We need to explain those concepts and break them down and simplify them and demystify them as much as possible for the people that are coming in. Because also there's another thing of once we are in the industry, then we get so attached to what we know, to what we've come to learn, you know? And sometimes what we've come to learn is not necessarily what should be done or the best way that it should be done. So, Well,
I suppose that's also quite an insular way of looking at it, you know, be a CDO. Like you said at the beginning of the episode, is that engineering, finance, marketing, everything these days has a degree of data analytics to it. And it's not about the data office and the analytics team being the only ones that can actually do the models, manage the data, ensure that it's good data quality. So I think it's really about that pervasive understanding of data analytics across all sort of parts of the business. And I think that needs to also be part of university, and all courses should have some level of data literacy within them.
Definitely. And I think it goes back to that point of, you know, financial literacy is not only for accountants or for financial planners, it's for all of us. You need to have a level of financial literacy, and it's the same. It's the same with data literacy, or with understanding, being able to work with data. The basic concepts, or reading or understanding, reading a data, you should be able to pick up a dashboard and understand it, you know, at the very least. Or you should even be able to build up a dashboard for your department, even if you're in marketing, even if you're in healthcare, you must be able to be on a high level, collect some kind of data, analyze it, and come out with a conclusion.
Now, do you think that maybe some of the problem is also internal, that data teams, analytics teams try to sort of hoard and control? You know, this is our expertise, we don't want to give it away, because then where do we sit? Do you think there's an element of that, or do you think that's changing now that it's, you know, it's all about citizen data science and data literacy across the organization?
I think the idea of data citizenship and, you know, data evangelism is definitely growing from, it has improved from where it was, but there's still that element of wanting to hold the function and you know, be the deciders of it. And I personally believe that for any organization to get the most and to be able to use data in the best way possible to get the best answers, it needs to be an all hands on deck effort. We can't as analytics teams produce analytics that are effective without the passion, the understanding, and the drive. Not just the minimalistic involvement that you've sort of seen in the past, whereby business knows that, okay, we can put in a requirement and they'll give us this. No, they need to be part of the movement of data. It can't only exist in the analytics teams that understand the technologies. It sort of needs to be an enterprise-wide a movement that we all adopt and we all put our hands on deck and we nurture it. Because if you think about it, who are the generators of the data? It's not the people that work with the data to produce analytics. Exactly, and that speaks to data quality. If those people don't understand the bottom line or the downstream impact of creating or of producing data in a quality form, you know, then we end up having to work with data and clean it up and do all sorts of unnecessary work that if we all understood, we can produce the best kind of data in a way that fits the kind of analytics that we need to put to push the company or the organization forward. Because we all understand across the board that at the end of the day, when our system produces this data, this is the end goal. The same data must be used to feed into the innovation of the same system. Because what is it about? It's about the customer at the end of the day. And if your system is a customer service system, for instance, if it's not generating data in the best way possible, or in a way that is in a standard, that is in a good standard, the same customer is gonna be impacted either by, you know, we're not gonna be innovative fast enough to meet their growing needs, or we're not gonna be responsive enough to their pain points. And as much as your function perhaps speaks directly to the customer, it speaks to the data.
Yeah.
Or the data is going to speak to your customer eventually. So it's a, you know, it's for all of us to be all hands on deck and to understand and to drive the evangelism. Back in the day when I was in Junior Muka's team, actually, we used to have super users.
Yeah.
You know, I miss those days where we had super users within the business. Those people that drive the mandate with you.
The real champions.
Yes, the champions of the data, because then they could break the message down in simple terms for the people that they work with, you know? And that's what I feel that made the data community to exist outside of the analytics or the IT team, but to be in the business as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the ideal state where it's kind of used across everywhere and it's part of the organizational fabric. And I think, you know, if more young people are aware of data, they're exposed to data, analytics, etc., it'll become just sort of a mass change because everybody's on board.
Yes.
So I think it's something that's trickling, it's coming along. Some organizations are a bit further than others, but I think over time, it'll just be that everybody's just, we do data.
Yes.
And then it'll kind of just, the whole thing will switch.
Yes,
over. So,
definitely.
yeah.
And I think it will be an investment of everyone, not just the IT office, because then it also fits into an issue of cost. Who's going to pay for that? Who's going to pay for that? When we all understand that we need to pay for the data.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's a business, it's a business advantage and it's a business problem at the moment, totally. So, Ncumisa, thank you so much for joining me. It's been fascinating to hear your thoughts on it and your passion and everything for it as well. It's great to have people like you in the industry who drive these things as well. So, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Craig. Thank you for having me. It's been such an honor. It's been exciting.
Absolute pleasure.
I look forward to the next conferences that are coming up.
I can't wait. In-person events from October onwards. And thank you so much again for joining me as a host there.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite.
Yeah.